This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. I'm Tony Pesta, joined by Corey Walsh, and today we're doing part 2 of our season previews. Now, it's been a few weeks since we did part 1. We kind of got caught up in the craziness of preseason and all that, so if you're interested in seeing part 1, we already previewed all the guards on this roster. I'll link that in the description. I'll put a picture of it up right here so you guys can check that out if you want. Today, we're doing part 2, and I'm kind of glad that we're doing part 2 after the preseason's over because some of my takes have changed a little bit. Now that we've seen some preseason basketball. And I also want to start by, issuing an apology to Tyrese Proctor. I was unfamiliar with your game. I'm a little higher on Proctor than I was when we did our first round of previews with the guard. So we'll talk more about that in a second. For today, I do just want to say I did my best. I mentioned this on the first episode too, but I did my best to break down our previews by positional groups. And I tried to make them as even as possible, right? Because there's more guards and bigs on this roster than there are wings. So for today, the players who we are considering wings would be DeAndre Hunter, Max Strus, Sam Merrill, Dean Wade, and Jaylen Tyson. And again, for anybody, I gave this, disclaimer in the first episode, and I still think someone on Twitter or the comments were like, why is this player considered a guard? I'm like, guys, I'm just trying to make it even across the board, all right? So that's why Max Strus and Sam Merrill are considered wings. But with all that out of the way, we're going to get into our preview in a second, but I want to start off by flipping it to Corey because we haven't gotten to hear your thoughts on Cavs preseason. They won their first preseason game at the very end of it, narrowly avoiding another 0-4 start for Kenny Atkinson. Corey, what was your overall take on preseason this year?
I think preseason really highlighted the role players, I think, which is kind of what I think preseason's mostly for. If we're not really tuning into the preseason to be like, let's see if Donovan Mitchell still has it. But like Tyrese Proctor, Craig Porter Jr. had good games. DeAndre Hunter seemed to have carried his off-season momentum into the preseason. Now we're just hoping it pans into the regular season. But we also saw the coaching staff get kind of creative with some lineups, as we know that there's injuries that kind of will affect the rotation for the first few weeks and months of the season. So it was interesting to see what the coaching staff kind of thinks of this and what they think is the best configuration of the roster. But nothing concrete for me really to walk away from the preseason. It's more just you can look at it from individual players. I don't really think my opinion of the team as a whole has changed. Maybe, like you said, our opinions have maybe become more positive of certain players, or maybe some of our thoughts have been reaffirmed on players like Lonzo Ball and Larry Nance, showing that they could be contributors. And I didn't really have many negatives from the preseason, even though the record would say otherwise. But if you really care about the regular season or the preseason record, then you need to reevaluate yourself a little.
You've lost sight a little bit. Yeah, the preseason is just for making sweeping overreactions and conclusions off of small sample sizes. That's all we're really here for. But yeah, I mean, I think you hit on it. Like, look, there's really not that much to learn from the preseason, especially for a team like the Cavs who, right, they've kind of got everything already figured out in terms of they have their stars, they have their role players. There's not a lot of young guys on this team that are trying to prove themselves in the way that other teams in the preseason, like lottery teams have, rookies and all these different guys coming in. Really, we already know who's going to play the bulk of the minutes for the Cavs this year. And a lot of those guys didn't really have much of a reason to try too hard in the preseason. So it's more about just ramping up, getting into the swing of things. Again, apologies to Tyrese Proctor because he's a lot better than, we weren't even low on him in our first round of previews here, but I just think we would have been higher on him had we recorded after the preseason. And I'm sure we'll have time to talk about him again. But let's go ahead and get into this because you already mentioned DeAndre Hunter, and he was, I've said it before, just an automatic bucket in the preseason. This dude is basically just not missed throughout the entire preseason. Last year, when he joined the Cavs, he averaged 14.5 points on 48% field goal shooting and 42% from the three-point line. So pretty much just a three-level scorer, pretty athletic, fits right in as a starter, which he didn't last year. They kept him off the bench. This year, all signs point to him starting. Kenny Atkinson has basically already confirmed it. He is going to be the starter. And so my big question for Hunter is, what does it look like with him in the starting lineup now? Because he hardly even played minutes with the core four last year. And it's going to take a minute for him to get to that this year because Darius is injured. We don't know how long he's going to miss, but he is going to be in that starting lineup at least next to Mobley, Allen, Mitchell, and presumably Sam Merrill for now. My question is, what does he look like in the starting lineup? And are those little details ever going to become more polished? Is he going to become a better rebounder? Is he going to be a better passer? Better defender? Like, those are all the big questions because I already know offensively he's just an automatic bucket. But Corey, DeAndre Hunter this season, what are your expectations for him?
I think in the best case scenario for DeAndre Hunter, he could be in contention for this team's second best scorer without Garland and Strus to start the season. I think the Cavs will we'll learn pretty early if the Mobley offensive leap took another step from last season. And if not, then I think Hunter will probably slide into that number 2 spot behind Mitchell for the second punch for the offense. I think it's going to be tough for Hunter. I don't think I see any world where we'll have a conversation where Hunter is like an all-star contender for the Eastern Conference, but the Cavs could definitely maximize him. And I think the system that the Cavs play, especially with the way Atkinson likes ball movement, could be to Hunter's benefit because Hunter's at his worst, I think, when he gets tunnel vision and kind of just the ball, everything that everyone hated about when Colin Sexton had the ball is basically what DeAndre Hunter does from a mentality standpoint, which is like Colin Sexton could score, but you knew the minute that the ball touched Colin Sexton's hands, it was not going to leave. Yeah. And DeAndre Hunter is the king of like the Klay Thompson challenge, which is like, how little dribbles can I take before I just pull up? And I think if Hunter can kind of buy into that offensive mentality that the Cavs are setting forth, he'll have a very successful start to the season. And the only way that it really wouldn't work out for Hunter is just simply if the shots aren't falling, because I think he will get quality shots with the talent that's around him too.
Yeah, no, I think that's all great points. I think the role that he's in really is simplified. I think he's set up to have the best year of his career to build off of how good he was last year. Just like we said, an efficient scorer from every level. It's basically just going to be, in this offensive system, he's going to get plenty of clean looks. So it comes down to how well he shoots the ball, and all signs point to him being a pretty good shooter. Now he's going to have off nights, and that's where I think, the little things like, can he be a better rebounder? Can he be a little bit, more bought in on defense? Those are what's going to raise his floor on nights where he's not shooting the ball well. But you mentioned it, and I'm going to give a positive and a negative here. And I want to say, I do think, Hunter, like I said, should be in a position to have the best year of his career. But I'm going to start with a negative here. One thing that does concern me is what you already mentioned is the ball going to stop too much with him in the starting lineup, especially this version of the starting lineup that doesn't have Darius Garland in there. DeAndre Hunter is not a guy who really moves the ball all that much. He's not much of a playmaker. He doesn't really connect in that way. And especially with this version of the starting lineup, I want to give Jackson credit because he's been pushing the state for a while. If you watch in the preseason, and again, it's just preseason, but the bigs were having a hard time getting the ball, especially Jarrett Allen. Like, no one was really feeding Jarrett Allen the way that he would normally get fed. And that's because Darius Garland's not there to give him the ball, but also Max Strus. One of the more underrated aspects of his game has been that he has always gotten Mobley and Allen really involved. He's a really good tertiary playmaker in that regard. DeAndre Hunter doesn't really have that. And so I do think, sure, Evan Mobley, we're all expecting him to make an offensive leap. He should be able to create for himself. Jarrett Allen, that's not going to be the case. And so I wonder, the offense at times did look clunky. Kenny Atkinson and Donovan Mitchell both used that word to describe the offense in preseason, is that it was a little clunky. Now, they were saying it more so in the sense of we're all just trying to get back into the swing of things. They weren't saying DeAndre Hunter doesn't pass the ball. That's why it's not working. I want to be clear on that. But I do think, you need someone to grease the wheels of this offense. And, when you have the two bigs out there, and Darius and Max Strus are two of the main guys who do that. And without them, it could be a little bit of a concern. But to end on a positive with DeAndre Hunter, I think the big thing, and this outweighs basically everything else we've been talking about his scoring, you can't hide anybody on DeAndre Hunter in the way that you could hide players on Max Strus, right? So, for example, when Darius and Donovan are both healthy, opposing teams if they had the players to do this, they would try to put bigger wings on Darius and Donovan, and you would hide your point guard on Max Strus, right? You can't hide a point guard on DeAndre Hunter because he's too big and he's too gifted as an on-ball creator. So to use an example, let's say the Cavs play the Knicks in the playoffs. You would assume that, you would try to put Bridges, Anunoby, or Josh Hart on Mitchell and Garland, and then you would try to hide Jalen Brunson on, if it was Max Strus in the starting lineup, you would put Brunson on Max Strus. You can't put Brunson on DeAndre Hunter because Hunter will just put him in the basket, right? He's just going to put his back to him and score basically every time down the court. And so that's a mismatch problem that the Cavs haven't been able to create at the small forward position with Max Strus, because while he is a good scorer, he's not an on-ball guy, and he certainly doesn't have the size to punish smaller defenders. DeAndre Hunter can do that, and it adds a wrinkle to this Cavs offense where, sure, maybe he's not the playmaker that Max Strus was, but he's a much better on-ball scorer, and that's actually going to open up things in an entirely different way that I do think will outweigh any of the negatives that could come from him being a little bit of a ball stopper.
Yeah, and to go off the ball stopper point, I think if that scenario plays out where it kind of stagnates whenever Hunter gets the ball, I think that puts more pressure on Lonzo Ball in the games that he does play for the Cavs to kind of be the one to get the bigs involved more. Because like you were saying, the Cavs don't have a lot of connective tissue players. And Mobley can do that somewhat, but we're not going to see a ton of big-to-big lob type moments from them. This, I think, especially with less ball movement going around, those opportunities only usually really can happen because of the breakdown that the defense has with all the ball movement. And if Lonzo Ball is going to be, Donovan Mitchell will obviously get the bigs involved to an extent, but the most gifted passer now on the team with Darius out is by far Lonzo Ball. So in my eyes, I think it kind of just, if the ball stops with Hunter, it causes a domino effect of a lot of players having to pick up slack, whereas if Hunter buys into the selfless mentality, things can go a lot smoother.
Yeah, I agree. And to basically wrap this up too, it's like if you're looking in this current starting lineup for like who is going to be the guy who acts as more of a connective playmaker, I kind of think you have a better chance of Sam Merrill doing some of that stuff than DeAndre Hunter. Like, I just don't think it's in DeAndre Hunter's game, or he's not wired really.
It's bad habits too from Atlanta.
Yeah.
Like even in his most successful season in Atlanta last year before the Cavs acquired him, the reason his stats were super inflated compared to his past seasons was also because the talent outside of Trae Young was pretty devoid on that roster. So the bad players pick up bad habits when playing on teams like the Hawks for a long period of time where it's going to be hard for them to break that. And as much as Hunter probably will buy into what Kenny Atkinson is selling, you also know that it's probably ingrained some way to his DNA where it's going to revert at some point. So you can't really bank on it either.
I agree with all that. And to wrap up the DeAndre Hunter segment, I think we both agree this is probably going to be the best year of his career. Like we said, he's in a perfect position. We touched on some of the negatives, right? We're trying to do an all-around preview here, but overall, we're very high on DeAndre Hunter. Now, I'm going to move on to Max Strus as our second player. Now, it's unclear when Max Strus is going to make his season debut. He is still out with a foot injury. Last season, he averaged 9 points on 38% three-point shooting. It's actually the best that he has shot from the three-point line since Miami went to the finals in 2022. So it was a good year for Max Strus in terms of three-point shooting. When he does return, he's going to be, coming off the bench. I don't know if he's necessarily the sixth man or where he falls in that rotation, but he is going to be coming off the bench for the first time permanently with the Cavs. And so my question for him is basically going to be, what type of three-point shooting season do we get from Max Strus, right? Like, is it closer to 38-40% again, or is it going to be a little bit lower like it was his first year in Cleveland? He's got a lot of three-point variance, and considering that his role is going to change a little bit coming off the bench, I think that three-point shot is going to be almost more important because that's going to be the main skill that he's bringing. Yes, he's a connective guy. Yes, he's a good defender. He does lots of good things, but I think his role is going to be a little bit more of a microwave scorer off the bench than trying to fit in alongside Donovan, Darius, Mobley, Allen. He's going to be a little bit more free to score, and that means he's got to knock down shots. So, Corey, Max Strus this year, first time coming off the bench in Cleveland. What are your expectations?
I think this is going to be kind of a bump year for Max Strus. I think that it felt like the Isaac Okoro thing to an extent with Max Strus, where we're kind of forcing the square into the triangle hole here and to Max Strus's credit, he has enough skills in other areas other than scoring to where you don't really feel like it's as awkward as a fit as it should have been. But Max Strus obviously was brought to the Cavs for his scoring ability that he showed on that Miami Heat run. And he hasn't really been able to do that because the moment he stepped in the door, it was like all the talent with the Cavs also was coming up at the same time. So this will be really his best suited. I think it's a perfect fit for Max Strus. I think while he can, like you said, still kind of show off that like connective tissue, and he's obviously a pretty aggressive on ball defender. He's not great by any stretch, but he's also, we know that it's almost like we're getting Karis LeVert as the sixth man again, except this time I think we're a lot more confident in his outside shooting. I think that if Max Strus he comes off that injury looking as he did in seasons past, I think that we could see a sizable bump, honestly, in the points per game, because the Cavs bench is definitely, even in the preseason, I'm still leaving it being like there's a lot of question marks as to like where the scoring is going to come from this bench. And Max Strus is the obvious answer in the long term. I think the player we'll talk about also in this, Sam Merrill, is the short term answer. But I think that the team is in a really good position with Max Strus coming back, and it's going to be good. They'll be beneficial for both sides.
Yeah, this is the role that we've been asking for Max Strus really since he came to Cleveland. Like, he kind of was the starter by necessity because he was just the only guy on the team who could fit that 3 spot and check all the boxes that Cleveland needed. And like, to his credit, again, not the perfect fit there because he's just a little bit too short. But man, he really did fit with the starting lineup. Like, this team was really good with him in the starting lineup. It's just he didn't have the size to really be the permanent 3. And again, like, that 3-point variance, it's a little up and down at times, but it's interesting because I think if you break it down, like if you were looking for just a 3-point specialist on this team, Sam Merrill is going to come up before Max Strus comes. If you're looking for, a point of attack defender who's going to be elite on the perimeter, you're going to go Lonzo Ball before you go with Max Strus. If you're looking for this starting small forward, DeAndre Hunter fits that more than Max Strus. And so in some ways, his on-court skills feel replaceable or almost like expendable. But the one thing, and this might sound silly, but the one thing about Max Strus is that I guess 2 things. One, he's the only guy who kind of checks all those boxes to some degree, right? Like, Lonzo's not the 3-point shooter. Sam's not the connective player. DeAndre Hunter isn't as much of a ball mover. Same thing. But it's the intangibles with Max Strus. I would argue, like, outside of Donovan Mitchell, there's no one else on this roster that is more competitive, that takes it more seriously, that plays harder than Max Strus. And when you're trying to win a championship, sure, the intangibles shouldn't be like the selling point of a guy who's like your starting small forward. But for a bench guy like Max Strus coming off the bench, I think that's a really, really good thing to have. And so overall, I'm high on Max Strus still. I think he's a really good glue guy. I think he's in the ideal role now, and I can't wait for him to be healthy and to return.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you noted that he's basically the most well-rounded player the Cavs have, not in the sense that like we've talked about it before when it comes to like the way that the Cavs have developed players. It feels like they've kind of hyper-focused on a few skill sets. And you could kind of tell that Max Strus came from that Miami background with the way that he's so well-rounded. Like, he doesn't excel necessarily in anything. You would say his 3-point shot is his bread and butter of what made him like get a spot in the league. But overall, like he touches on so many things. There's very few things you would say with Max Strus that he lacks in outside of like, and then when you also keep that in mind with the fact that we're playing him basically out of position at small forward, when naturally he'd probably be a shooting guard on most teams more than a small forward, and that he held up in the way that he did. It only makes sense that he would look better this season than in seasons past, just because of the way that this team has set him up now, putting him in an ideal position. The only way that I think he would ever go back into the starting lineup is if the Cavs staff just realizes that DeAndre Hunter at the 3 is not really necessarily panning out, and that his role is ideally that 6-man Heat flamethrower type role.
Yeah, and I think that the important thing is, and I think I mentioned this earlier with DeAndre Hunter, but I can't remember, but it's the lineup versatility, right? Like, you do have someone you can pivot to. If it's a matchup that calls for DeAndre Hunter in the starting lineup, we're going to find out how well that works in the regular season soon, but it looks like it should be good. If it's not that type of matchup, then maybe you put Max Strus back in the starting lineup, and he already has all the reps playing next to those guys. We know that it does work. So the fact that you can pivot, it doesn't even have to be the starting lineup. It could be who you close with, right? Maybe you close with Max Strus sometimes. Maybe you close with DeAndre Hunter. The Cavs have a lot of lineup versatility. And a guy like Max Strus, who, again, is like maybe the most well-rounded role player on this team, just a valuable guy to have. Any other takes on Max Strus, or should we move on to Sam Merrill?
Let's move on.
Let's move on to Sam Merrill. Now, I have a somewhat spicy take on Sam, but I'll save that for a second. Sam Merrill last season averaged 7 points on 37% three-point shooting, a little bit lower than when he first broke out, but overall, he was still very impactful. Clearly, the Cavs value the type of player that Sam Merrill is because they chose to extend him this year, and he's going to be in the starting lineup with Darius out. Kenny Atkinson seems to love Sam. Two questions that I have for Sam, and I'll pitch to you, and then I'll get my hot take off later. But one, does his defense start to get noticed? Because I think it was starting to get noticed towards the end of last year. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying he's an all-defensive guy, not by any means. But I think the general narrative around Sam early on was that he's just a complete liability on defense. And I think towards the end of last year, we started to realize, hey, maybe he's actually breaking even, or even at times being a positive on defense. That's one thing that I'm wondering if that continues to carry over. And if he does establish himself as being hey, he's actually a pretty reliable defender. And the second question is, what kind of three-point shooting season do we get from Sam Merrill, right? 37%, that's solid. That's pretty good, especially for the types of shots that he does take. But hey, if he's shooting above 40%, that makes all the difference. We know that Sam can get hot in a hurry, and he genuinely, at least from what I can see, he seems to be one of the most gifted three-point shooters in the NBA. And so if he's able to shoot 42%, somewhere like that, and really just burn down the house on any given night, that would make a big difference for the Cavs, especially at the start of the year with Darius out. And
yeah, so I think with Sam Merrill, there's multiple things to kind of chew on here. One, I think Sam Merrill in this role is going to be kind of determine what type of ceiling Sam Merrill has. I know that sounds kind of weird for a player who's been in the league as long as he has, but he's never really gotten this opportunity to kind of be a starter on a night-to-night basis with the Cavs. And with that, you kind of wonder, because in the past, Sam has been utilized in the sense that, does Sam have it this given night? If not, that's fine. We'll stash him away type thing, and then we'll just kind of trickle down the rotation from there. If Sam Merrill's defense shows up to the level that it did to the end of last year, I find that very interesting, because defense, Sam Merrill physically is nothing special, but I think for regular season basketball in the NBA, a lot of that defense comes down to effort. And if Sam Merrill honestly cares enough to give a lot, the defensive intensity that we saw at the end of last year, he'll definitely be able to hold his own. And if the three-point shooting I'm not expecting, honestly, him to shoot in the 40s as a starter. I think that's easier to do when you're coming off the bench. I think if Sam Merrill finishes his stint in the starting lineup as a 36 to 38% three-point shooter on decent volume, then Sam Merrill is going to be turning some heads. And the people who were kind of upset, myself included, that basically were upset that Ty Jerome's contract went to Sam Merrill, are going to feel a lot better about that decision when they see that Sam Merrill is so much more useful than what I think the perception is, not even amongst Cavs fans, that he's just this three-point barrage type guy who either has it on some nights or doesn't. I think people forget that in Summer League a few seasons ago, Sam Merrill basically led the offense for that Summer League team and looked very competent at doing that.
A powerhouse offense, the most dominant Summer League team I've ever seen.
He was running point, honestly, and I think people forget that he can actually kind of be that type of role on a given night. I think people will worry at Sam Merrill at the starting shooting guard because they'll think he's another ball stopper on the floor, that he's just going to pick it up and fire it away. But I feel like I know where your hot take's going, just based on
I'll get to it. But to what you said, he really is. He's one of the best off-ball players in the NBA, and we saw it in Summer League. We've seen it in the NBA level too. But it's he's not a ball stopper at all. He's the type of player where Sam catches the ball, and basically within a split second, either he's shooting it, he's passing it, or he's dribbling. He's not really going to just stand around doing nothing. He is getting off the ball right away. And so we've seen he can run a dribble handoff, right? He's great at sprinting around, realizing, hey, I got a little bit of daylight. I'm taking the shot. Oh, you're pressing up too close. Well, I'm going to dribble into the paint. Now, this is where the limitations come, is that he's not a great finisher. He's not a great playmaker, but he has talked about, Kenny Atkinson's mentioned it, Sam's mentioned it. He wants to be a little bit more dynamic as an offensive player this year. He wants to be able to put the ball on the floor and make some plays. I do think he has instincts as a playmaker. He threw a beautiful pass last night in the preseason where it's just kind of like a touch pass back to the corner. He cuts the hoop, catches it, and as soon as the ball touches his hands, he's already turning around and throwing it to a wide open DeAndre Hunter. It's just things like that where I'm like, he has the potential to put the ball on the deck a little bit and just be like, can you be a Duncan Robinson level playmaker, right? We're not saying he needs to average 7 assists. Just can you do a little bit more secondary stuff? He also hit a floater, which I don't expect to see that very often, but if we do, that would be crazy. Here's my hot take, all right? Now, here's the thing.
This is a safe space. Jackson's not here to pour water on it.
Who knows? Maybe he would pour gasoline on this one because it might be up his alley. But I want to be clear. This is a take that I don't want to be held accountable for if it doesn't pan out, but I would like the credit for it. I would like the credit for it if it pans out. Should there be some whispers or some thoughts about Sam Merrill being a 6th man of the year candidate? Because I know he's going to start the year. Now, hear me out. I know he's going to start, but he probably won't start too many games to where he'll be ineligible. I just think, too, last season, Malik Beasley was like the runner-up, and he just buried a bunch of three-pointers. Peyton Pritchard won the award. Now, he did some more on-ball stuff, but basically won it because he was just elite shooting the ball. Is there a world where Sam Merrill, being prioritized, because it sounds like he's going to be in the rotation. He's going to get a lot of minutes, especially to start off. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. Is there a world where Sam Merrill hits like 253s this year? Like Malik Beasley hit like 320 last year. And I think Sam Merrill's a better 3-point shooter than him. So again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but is there a world where Sam Merrill just catches fire and the Cavs are just running him off ball, all these different actions, and he's just coming off the bench, letting it fly, and we look up and it's like, dang, Sam Merrill is like in the top 5 for 3-point volume this year. Like he's shooting 42% and he's made 260, or even could he hit 300? I don't know. But the point is, it's something to keep an eye on. That's all I'm going to say. Again, I don't want to be held accountable if it doesn't even come close, but he is kind of in a position, especially to start the year, where like he could just let it fly. And coming off the bench, there's no Ty Jerome on the bench. DeAndre Hunter's not on the bench. Where's the offense coming from? Lonzo Ball's playing, but Lonzo Ball's going to help Sam Merrill get even more 3-point opportunities.
And he's only playing every other. So.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's like there's a huge gap on this bench right now in terms of, where's the offense going to come from? Cavs are probably going to win a lot of games. I'm just saying, man, if the Cavs win 60-plus games and Sam is in like the top 5 for 3-point makes and he's shooting above 40% and he's playing like quality defense, just keep an eye on it. That's all. I'm not saying I'd bet on it, but it's somewhere out there in the multiverse. It could happen.
What if Sam Merrill is playing that well, though? Who's to say he doesn't squeeze DeAndre Hunter out? And then the Cavs play 3 small with the 2 bigs.
Sam Merrill just fills the role that we thought Max Strus just couldn't do. Yeah, you never know, man. Maybe let's not sell him short. Maybe Darius is out the door and it's Sam in this. I'm kidding.
All right.
You can get that part. I'm just kidding. But no, I do think there's like maybe like a 1% chance Sam Merrill just lights the world on fire in a 6th man of the year because the Cavs are going to win a lot of games.
This sounds like the Tony Pesta 13-cent bet of the year. Tony,
yeah, this is
Tony's famous. Tony's famous
bet.
For his minuscule bets.
If they give me a promo free bet, I'm putting it on Sam Merrill. Does he even show up on the list to bet on for 6th man of the year? This is what I'm saying.
When you post I will follow up in the tweet below saying "Strike while the iron's hot."
Get on it now. But yeah, that's basically all I had on Sam Merrill. Do we have any you want to another hot take? Anything
honestly, that wasn't the direction that I thought you were going to go. I was thinking that you were going to say if Sam Merrill's defense was half as good as we were thinking it could be, he could be in contention for being one of the league's better 3-and-D options.
Yeah. I mean, but it does kind of go hand in hand with what I'm saying, because it's like if he's hitting threes and it's like, hey, Sam Merrill, he can play defense. It's like, hey, the narratives could form quickly. Again, wouldn't advise betting on it, but
is abundant on this Cavs roster right now.
That's
the
the
role
point.
players
That's the
are
point.
begged to do something.
We just saw Ty Jerome come out of nowhere and finish third in Sixth Man of the Year. There's a huge gap there. Just keep an eye on it. But I say we move on to Dean Wade now. Let's shout out Dean. Listen, I'm just going to be very straightforward with my takes on him. Right, last season he averaged 5 points, 4 rebounds, shot 36% from the 3-point line. My expectation for Dean this year, just continue to be who you are. You know, like I'm past the point where I'm like, can Dean Wade be the starter? Can Dean Wade take, 6-7 threes a game? Like, he just be who he is, right? We understand that he is, no exaggeration, one of the best perimeter switchable defenders in the NBA. Like, he's not all defense level, but he's one of the better ones, right? I'm not going to rank him. I'm not saying he's like the 13th best defender. He's one of the better ones in the NBA. He can shoot the hell out of the ball. Now, he doesn't do it, but he can. He can shoot the hell out of the ball. He's a really good shooter. Donovan Mitchell apparently said that he tells Dean Wade every day that you're the best shooter in the world. I wouldn't go that far, but he is a good three-point shooter. He is a good three-point shooter, and once in a blue moon, he does shoot the ball, and all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, Dean Wade had 18 points, 10 rebounds tonight. That was awesome. You're going to get those awesome games every once in a while. You're also going to get the games where he doesn't shoot the ball and he plays like 10 minutes and he's off the court. For the role that he plays on this team, which is somewhere in the back end of the rotation, that's awesome. And I think the last thing here, and then I'll pitch it to you, the big thing and the reason why that might sound like I'm being negative on Dean, but I actually think it's legitimately great to have on this team because he's not as important as he used to be. 2 years ago, you looked at the Cavs wing depth and it was just a picture of Dean Wade. And then you also looked at their front court depth, and it was Mobley, Allen, and then Dean Wade. He was the only guy that you had that could play those roles. Now you have a DeAndre Hunter, you have Thomas Bryant and Larry Nance Jr. who can play backup big minutes. You have Max Strus and Jaylen Tyson who can give you some forced 3 minutes. Dean Wade is not the only option anymore. And so I just think that makes it a lot easier to live with the fact that he is who he is. And he's a very helpful role player. He might not blossom into anything more than that, but for what he is, it's pretty good to have.
Can I interest you in American cheese? That's basically
that's what he is. You know what you're going to get. You can't go wrong with it.
Yeah, I'm with you in the same sense that my hopes and dreams for Dean Wade have vanished. I'm not waking up expecting to have the conversation of where has this Dean been the whole time? It's something where if you really make realistic expectations for what Dean Wade's going to be, you will enjoy him to the highest level that you can. If you're sitting here assuming and projecting of what Dean Wade could be, you're going to miss the point of what Dean Wade is to this Cavs team. And he is a versatile player. He is capable of shooting the leather off the ball, which we have seen. He is always going to be capable of playing quality defense and without the likes of Isaac Okoro, now those point of attack defenders are even more important for the Cavs. But yeah, I'm not expecting us to have a conversation 2 months into the season being oh my God, Dean Wade is shooting 4 threes a game. This is crazy. I dreamed of days like this. Yeah, no, I think Donovan Mitchell if that's what he's been saying to him for the longest time, maybe Dean Wade just hates positive affirmations. Maybe we just have to switch to absolute trash and dragging
negative
Dean
reinforcement.
Wade through the dirt. Dean Wade, he needs to go up and be I bet you can't shoot at all. You probably should just quit right now while you're ahead.
Should we rage bait Dean Wade? Is that what we've all been trying so hard to encourage him? Maybe he needs to be rage baited. That's what we've been missing.
Exactly.
But no, I agree with what you're saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, the biggest testament, I think, to Dean Wade's talent is that despite the fact the Cavs basically kind of shelved him, I feel in the second half of the season, teams are still trying to get Dean Wade on their team. We saw rumors that teams were calling about Dean Wade in the offseason, the Cavs are holding on to. And that's a testament to A, how much the Cavs believe in Dean Wade, and B, to how much value other teams see in Dean Wade. So to have a guy like that, like you're saying, that's at the back end of our bench is just showing how far we've come for the Cavaliers depth. And I know like it kind of sounds like I'm being like wishy-washy when I talk about the Cavs depth being like, oh, well, they're obviously lacking in some areas scoring, but you can also be a lacking scoring bench, but then provide in a multitude of other ways. I think the Cavs are way deeper in the other aspects from their bench that we haven't seen before, as opposed to years past where it was kind of like we had 2 quality scorers off the bench and then a bunch of question marks.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I don't want it to make it seem like I'm thinking that the Cavs bench is terrible. I just think when you're losing 2 starters who mostly provide offensive firepower and those bench players have to move up a role, you're obviously going to lose scoring quality on your bench.
For sure, right? Like when the team is healthy, fully healthy, which hopefully they will be when it matters, this team is deep as hell. They have a lot of their bench in many ways is much more reliable because it's not so dependent on how well are we shooting the ball tonight. Ty Jerome we saw in the playoffs, and you guys know where I stand on Ty Jerome. I still think that he could have helped this team, but we saw if the shots aren't falling, he's not impactful. Guys like Dean Wade, guys like even Sam Merrill, Lonzo Ball, Larry Nance Jr., whoever it may be on this bench, they find other ways to be impactful, and that is just really, really helpful when you're trying to go deep in the playoffs because 3-game shooting skid could be the end of your season. But if you're able to help and raise the floor in other ways, like someone like Dean Wade can, then that's just going to be, that's the way to go. And so hypothetical Dean Wade, we don't need to have the conversation. We know who Dean Wade is. Maybe he'll surprise us, but I think we know who he is, and who he is a genuinely good role player. Like, listen, man, he's 6'9", can defend 1 through 5, can shoot 36 to 40% from 3 on low volume. Not a ball stopper, which I think is he's not a ball stopper, but he does sometimes break plays by not shooting the ball, right? Like it's an automatic reset at times, but he's also really good at making the extra pass, moving off the ball right away too. So there's some give and take there, but he plays well without the ball. Good cutter, good rebounder. Lots of stuff to love about Dean Wade. If you're not like looking at him through this lens of like, why can't you be a premier 3-and-D starting caliber wing? It's like, no, he's not that caliber player. And when you're able to just look at him that way, it's like, okay, he's still a really helpful role player.
2K franchise mode is really like blurred the lines of what true player development looks like, where like if anyone who's playing 2K, like even the worst players on your roster, like in one season, like off season become like infinitely improved in areas. That's not how every player works. Some players just improve in other areas than their main skill. And also, I think if you followed the Cavs long enough, you should know that I wouldn't necessarily say player development is at the top of our list.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation that we could have. And listen, when we look at some of these younger guys, and this is a good way to transition to Jaylen Tyson, because I think player development is going to be key here. Because I'll say it, I tweeted this. I'm just a little bit more concerned about Jaylen Tyson's offense than I was expecting to be. Now, obviously, he's entering his second season. It's relatively small sample size, all things considered. In the preseason, he shot 5 of 18 from deep, 27%. Again, small sample size, but the thing that's concerning is that those jumpers looked bad. Like, it did not look like it was going in. He let go of the ball, and you just knew it wasn't going in. And so I wasn't expecting that. Entering the league, we kind of thought, okay, Tyson, he's got some juice offensively. That's going to be like his calling card, and the rest of the stuff we'll have to see if it translates. But right now, I'm going to compare him to Isaac Okoro just because I think it's an interesting player comparison, and they play somewhat similar roles in terms of where they are in the rotation with this current team. I think Tyson, he's a worse defender than Okoro, but he's much more physical. And so in a way, I almost think that could result in that could almost give you better results defensively, someone like that. But then at the same time, I think he's a worse 3-point shooter than Okoro, which I would have never guessed. And so it's this weird outcome for where we are currently with Tyson, where I'm like, I don't really know what role he's supposed to play, because obviously the Cavs are trying to force him into this off-ball role, but he's not really an off-ball threat, right? Like, all he can do is kind of spot up in the corner because he's not a good movement shooter. He doesn't have the athleticism to kind of like fly off a dribble handoff and take someone to the rim. Like, people are just dropping off of him. They're not going to chase him over the screens. And again, he doesn't have the finishing ability to attack and get into the paint that way. And so if he's just spotting up, and he's shooting worse than Okoro did, I don't know how that role pans out for him. And so I am concerned. I'm not like pulling the alarms or anything, but I'm taking note of where the emergency exits are, because I'm just like, I don't know if it's going to take a long time for the off ball stuff to get there. I actually think, I know I'm rambling right now, but the on ball stuff, I think you have a bet. Like, let's fast forward 5 years from now, whether it's in Cleveland or on another team, I think there's a greater likelihood that Jaylen Tyson is like succeeding as an on-ball creator off the bench for like some other team, where it's like, okay, he's just basically coming off the bench as a shooting guard, gets to run some pick and roll, have the ball in his hands. I think there's a better likelihood of that than right now him developing into like an off-ball catch and shoot threat who just thrives without needing the ball. I don't really see that. I want to give him some credit for the defense. I think there's some interesting stuff there, but I'm worried about his ability to impact the game offensively. That's where I'm at on Tyson. What do you think of all this?
No, I'm 100% in your boat, because the whole thing with Tyson, when you watched his college tape, was he was the offensive engine at every place he played, basically. And so when it kind of him going to the Cavs, I felt like was one of the more awkward fits he could have been to, because he's never going to have that role replicated as long as Donovan Mitchell, Darius, Garland, and Evan Mobley are there. Like the touches and on ball opportunities for him to kind of just set the table are not there. And so going into this offseason, and I would assume last season, the focus was really probably to figure out how Tyson can kind of use, because he is talented when he has the ball in his hands. I mean, obviously, he was talented enough to be viewed as a first-round pick in the league, and he was a bucket in college. But if the three-point shot's not falling, and that's just going to minimize like the way that defenses pay attention to him, which makes him even less useful off ball. Even if he doesn't have off ball shooting skills, like if he can't locate and then fire away from three, then that's going to be pretty tough. I honestly, like, even as you were saying it, I've been thinking it throughout the preseason too, but Tyson's almost a player that would have really done well in like the 2000s, where the three ball wasn't as important, because like that physical level of play, like it's clear that he could get to the basket. He's very physical. He loves contact, but like in today's NBA, like that's unfortunately just not a skill set that's going to really benefit 2020 level offenses right now. And unless that 3-point shot falls, I think there's a world in which Tyson probably plays his way out of the rotation within the first 20 games. And that's not necessarily like I expect the Cavs to kind of like pack it up on Tyson, but maybe that just means that he has to play more in the G League and develop a little more in other areas. And if Proctor, let's say, like kind of picks up where he's been in the preseason, where like he kind of gets minutes sprinkled in at the beginning and Tyson's not playing well, I could see a world in which that those minutes kind of get flipped. Because if Proctor's 3-point shot has staying power and Tyson's does not, then that's going to be a sliding doors moment, I think, for Jaylen Tyson. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if like the offense isn't there, that the physicality and defense isn't enough to keep him even in consideration for minutes, even with a depleted roster.
I think that's a really good point. And it's something that, again, I want to reiterate what we said at the top in terms of like not getting carried away in preseason, but like entering the season, I would have 100% said that, yeah, Jaylen Tyson will be ahead of Tyrese Proctor in the rotation. I would have believed that 100%. Now, after preseason, I'm like almost convinced that it could end up being flipped, because right now it's like, okay, so what does Jaylen Tyson do that's good at the NBA level right now? It's basically just he's a hustle player. He has bought into the challenge defensively, which is like Kenny wants guys to pick up full court. He wants to be more aggressive, try to generate turnovers. Like Tyson is doing those things. He has a super high motor. He's going after every rebound. He's even like, there was a play in the last preseason game against Detroit where like, I forget, it was an offensive rebound. And Lonzo Ball, like, basically has it in his hands. Like, it's coming right to him. But Jaylen Tyson is just like a bull in a china shop. And he's just, like, running through people. And he, like, gets his hand on the ball and inadvertently hits it out of Lonzo Ball's hands, not a bounce. But it's just, like, that he is just playing like he's a heat-seeking missile going after the ball. And so there is value in that. And clearly there's some offensive talent, right? Like, that's what we heard going into this. We've seen it in Summer League. We've seen it even at the NBA level when it's kind of like garbage time and it's like, okay, Jaylen Tyson, just do your thing. He has tools offensively. It's just, I'm not sure if kind of playing that hide in the corner and catch and shoot three it's going to be a long-term development thing is what I'm trying to say. I don't think this is a dead end for Tyson. Like I said, maybe somewhere else outside of Cleveland in the future, you could see maybe it takes a couple years, his second contract, he goes somewhere else all of a sudden. Oh, Jaylen Tyson's a good rotational player. Maybe it does happen in Cleveland and the three-point shot develops. That development could happen rapidly, right? Like you never know if these types of things, but I think we have to be a little more patient with Tyson than we might have assumed earlier. And again, it was just preseason. Had he shot 5 of 18 or whatever it was, and like every shot looked good and it just didn't go in, I wouldn't be worried at all. The reason why I was worried is that the shots just looked bad. Like they were like no chance shots that were going up. And so to recap all of that, Tyson brings a lot defensively in terms of physicality and the hustle. There are avenues to where he can impact the game without scoring. It's just long-term getting into like the consistent rotation. It's going to depend heavily on his off-ball game, and I'm not convinced that he is ready to do that yet. And maybe, we'll end up finding out at some point in his career that the off-ball stuff is just never going to be there, and he's got to be an on-ball creator somewhere else. Because you mentioned, like, okay, in a different era, he'd be a better player, and I agree. I think if you even just put him on, like, the Trailblazers or just another team where it's like he can just come off the bench as like your seventh man and he gets to handle the ball, he'd probably immediately look like a good rotational player. But he's just kind of – Okoro was the good player to mention here because he's kind of being shoved into that Okoro box of like, get out of the way, stand in the corner. And Okoro made improvements, but it was never really going to work full time playing that role. And I see Tyson like going down that same path of just get out of the way, stand in the corner, shoot threes. I hope that doesn't end up being the case.
The only thing that makes that weirder with the Okoro comp is that like Okoro in college was not the engine of an offense. Like he was the tertiary offensive player. It'd be like he would flash on a play or two offensively. Like Tyson's tape is all him displaying like this Cade Cunningham like sense of like running an offense as a bigger wing type player. So I almost wonder what the Cavs were envisioning when they drafted Jaylen Tyson. I know it was like the 20th pick. So I don't remember exactly who was like around his range, but I almost wonder when they drafted him, did they assume that he was going to be did he contain the skill set to kind of be moved around positionally? Because there was no world even at the time of drafting that Jaylen Tyson was ever going to replicate that level of role within like his first few seasons. Like the Cavs would have to have emptied house for Jaylen Tyson to get the on-ball looks that he was getting in college. So if that's what they develop him towards, I think that's just not ideal drafting because you're setting him up to be in a really tough position. Whereas Okoro, I think the indictment for drafting Okoro was like you're taking a shooting guard and telling him to play small forward. Oh, and by the way, you need to learn how to shoot threes, which you never knew how to do in college. Like Tyson could shoot threes in college, but you're also taking away like 4 other things that he was good at and put him on the map for the draft and sticking him in the corner for a different reason.
Yeah. I think to end on a positive with Tyson, because I don't want to come across like super low on him. I'm really not. I think he is a good player. I just think that the timeline is a little bit further behind than I had hoped for, which is fine. Again, like he's a second-year player on a team that wants to win a championship. It's hard to fit in right away, but I think to end on the positive note, I do think that if he's able to develop the off-ball stuff, or even like, listen, we mentioned there's an offensive gap on this bench, right? Like Lonzo Ball's not going to play back-to-backs. He's going to miss some time. Max Strus is already out. Sam Merrill and DeAndre Hunter in the starting lineup. Where are they going to get some scoring from? There could be nights where Jaylen Tyson does have a little bit more added on to his plate, and maybe he gets some more reps, and it's like, okay, actually he is able to run. Maybe it's only like 2 minutes at a time, but okay, he is running some pick and rolls, and some of the offense is going through him, and it actually looks more comfortable. These are things that could happen throughout the course of his sophomore season. I'm less certain. Like I don't really think it's going to happen right away, but it could be something where it's like all of a sudden he has a stretch in February where it's like, okay, wow, he's shooting almost 40% from three. He's able to stay on the floor a little bit longer, and now some of that on-ball stuff is showing itself. That's like the best case scenario this season for Tyson. Again, I think overall it's just going to be – you got to be patient with him as a prospect. I don't think he's ready yet.
Yeah, and also it's like something too where like if Jaylen Tyson doesn't necessarily work in the Cavs system, it isn't necessarily that he's a bad player. It could just also be that what the Cavs need him to do, he isn't fit for that role specifically. I do think there is easily a world within like 4 years from now, like what you're saying, he's on his second team and they give him the opportunity to run a bench unit and he could thrive in that sense. I feel much more confident saying that he'll thrive in that situation right now than this. I think what the Cavs are setting him up for is a really tall task. And I don't think it's very likely we're having a conversation saying like, wow, I can't believe Jaylen Tyson like put it together.
I agree. I think long-term, the best role for him is going to be the on-ball guy. The off-ball stuff comes around, then hey, that would be awesome. I'm rooting for it, but I do think he's kind of. I think you mentioned earlier, it's like putting the triangle into the square peg right now. That kind of feels like what we're doing with Tyson, but we'll have to wait and see. That's going to do it for this episode of the Junkyard Pod. I want to thank everyone for watching or listening. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. We'll have more episodes coming soon. Leave us a comment on your thoughts on any of the takes that we just dropped. And again, thanks for watching. And as always, go Cavs.
I agree. Go Cavs. Jackson, tell Brian I said, hey, now that you're big time.